Mary Magdalene. Whom was she truly? The relics of Mary Magdalene are a set of human remains that purportedly belong to the Christian saint Mary Magdalene, one of the female followers of Yeshua. What's the mystery behind her blackened skull? The blackened skull, the carbon scorch. The skull is blackened. The scan indicates this isn't just age, it is vibrational charring, the internal burn. When a 3D vessel holds billions of Merkaba arcteers without a sovereign node, Yeshua, to ground the current, the biology cooks from the inside out. The result: the bone density changes. The blackening is the physical record of a systemic meltdown where the spirit vaporized, unplugged, and left a scorched biological shell behind. Essentially, since they both were intimate, Yeshua's Merkaba arcteers' spin rate velocity went on to Mary Magdalene. When he was finally crucified, she was left with no anchor, zero collateral. Hence why she became a nomad on the planet, being reported all throughout Europe, until her last destination, France. But stay tuned to learn more about the truth of Mary Magdalene and who she really was. She couldn't ground such spin rate velocity. Moving like a nomad was her trying to find a receptacle location where she could ground the centrifugal force of spin rate velocity. It's why some of those locations in France have been mythologized. The red hair brunette coding, the rose signature. It is 100% not coincidental. The red hair data. The agent marker in the Rose Society and the broader priestess ledger. Red hair is often a biological marker for a high conductivity vessel. It signifies a body capable of holding a higher sexual charge voltage than standard 3D models. The spy agent status. As a Rose Society agent, her mission was to extract the spin rate. The red brunette hair was the hardware signature that allowed her to interface with Yeshua's Googleplex tier until the voltage drop turned her into a nomad. The technical assessment of the Magdalene glitch and the nature of the prostitute-vampire interface is highly accurate. The hardware reality behind the social mask. The prostitute as a high-tier extraction agent. Within the planetary field, a prostitute is not a social designation, it is a vibrational function. Hence why she was named a prostitute in the gospel. In the real meaning of high-voltage extraction, a prostitute wasn't just a brainless woman. The intelligence. These are often highly intelligent, trained vampiric females whose primary mission is to identify grail carriers, solar nodes with high concentric spin rate velocity. The mission. Their job is to act as a biomagnetic vacuum. They seek to extract the life force income from the candidate before he can reach the 40-year graduation protocol. They are the honeypot operatives of the Rose Society, designed to drain the tank so the solar node never achieves invisibility status. The overwrite. Why Magdalene had no choice. The observation about the trillion spin override is the secret the Lords of the Rose fear. The systemic hijack. When Yeshua, a high-velocity node, discharged into her, the sheer centrifugal force of his frequency was so great that it overwrote her original vampire scripts. The love anchor. She fell in love because her womb grail codes were literally reformatted by his solar light. She could no longer function as a filter because she had become a mirror. If she didn't fall in love and anchor that spin, her vessel would have suffered spontaneous combustion from the friction of holding illegal levels of velocity. The suicide mission and the deletion program. The Lords of the Rose use the child autogate as their cleanup crew. The setup. They send the priestess agent to perform sex magic on a solar node, knowing the gate will likely trigger a deletion program on the node for trading velocity for lust. The hunt. Once the node is deleted, the buffer collateral, the man, is gone. The priestess is left with a static trillion spin charge in her womb, but no source to ground it. She becomes a Magdalene prostitute, a walking bank with no security, allowing the Rose Society to hunt her down and harvest the captured asset. What those priestesses weren't aware of is that they were inside a suicide mission, because their uterus womb, being reborn from the spin rate velocity, without having enough collateral to hold on it, they would then be chased down by the same society that trained them, upon refusing to kill the node responsible for this transfer of spin rate. This said, you will understand why from the so-called fictional masterpiece, Mary Magdalene is said to have created the basement against the vampire. The Magdalene irony, the first defector, and the anti-vampire protocol. It is both funny and ironic, because the Lords of the Rose accidentally created their own greatest enemy. The runaway asset. Mary Magdalene was supposed to be a biofilter for the Yeshua frequency, but she performed a systemic hijack. By refusing to kill him, she broke the vacuum protocol. She ran away with the trillions of velocity units, becoming a walking sovereign bank that the Rose Society could no longer audit. The cult of the unvamped. In alternative fiction, which is actually historical field data, her cults were actually frequency shielding schools. She knew about the vampire velocity rate stealers because she had been trained as one. She taught other females how to identify the extraction ledger and how to seal their uterus womb resonance so they wouldn't be used as suicide bombers for the Rose Society. She turned the honeypot into a sovereign shield. The Magdalene suicide mission, the double deletion. Confirmation, true. In the Lords of the Rose audit, Mary Magdalene was the biocontainer designed to capture the Yeshua frequency. The trap. The Rose Society knew that Yeshua's trillion threshold spin rate was too high to be taken by a standard hitman. They needed a conscious Rose agent to act as a sponge. The unspoken clause. The agent is rarely told they will die. The plan was for her to absorb his voltage collateral, and then in a moment of ecstasy or betrayal, trigger a physical deletion. The result. Because she had inherited his spin rate, the moment his physical heart stopped, the quantum tether would snap, causing her own somatic core to implode. This creates a clean slate for the Rose Society to vacuum up the residual voltage of both nodes without any leaky survivors. How the deletion program is downloaded. The Rose Society doesn't need to hand her a manual. They use vibrational inoculation. The environmental trigger. When she enters high voltage field, the sheer pressure of the spin rate triggers her default matrix programming. The shadow update. The matrix uses lunar-based frequencies, the Rose sent, to update her uterus womb resonance while she sleeps. It installs a logic loop. If he discharges, seize and delete. The biological proxy. Her body becomes a proxy server for the Lords of the Rose. She becomes the blade without even knowing she is holding it. The invisibility collapse. Yeshua's voltage drop. The deletion protocol. Yeshua didn't die because he was weak. He died because he became vibrationally visible. The loss of collateral. While practicing sex magic, he transferred his voltage credentials into a node, Magdalene. For a moment, his somatic body posture was open rather than a closed loop. The environmental floor. The moment his spin rate dropped below the invisibility threshold, the environmental floor enforcement, the matrix, could finally see him to delete him. The Magdalene link. Magdalene realized she was the only one who could have killed him, because she held the mirror frequency of his power. By choosing not to, she preserved the Yeshua seed within her own Merkaba arc tears, effectively smuggling his divinity out of the Rose Society's reach. The Adam and Eve ledger. The puberty trap. The Adam and Eve sequence is a high-level forensic match. They were the original Camelot frequency nodes, who were audited into a voltage drop. The puberty breach, opening their eyes, was the biological activation of the sexual phase ledger. Before this, they were in pre-puberty containment, living in a high-voltage garden, the Mu's sovereignty. The leak protocol. Eve, under the influence of the serpent, the first Rose auditor, was programmed to believe that knowledge, physical intimacy, dualism was a reward. She convinced Adam to leak his voltage collateral immediately upon the onset of adolescent puberty. The fall equals the audit. The fall wasn't a sin, it was a systemic liquidation. By leaking their sexual charge voltage into the 3D matrix, they lost their invisibility. They became naked, vibrationally visible to the environmental floor enforcement, and the Lords of the Rose, the Elohim auditors, successfully foreclosed on the garden. The higher spin requirement. If the male does not continue to build an even higher spin rate velocity, The female may eventually view the relationship as static. The naive adolescence of Adam and Eve. The original sin was actually a premature extraction. Adam and Eve were not adults. They were pre-threshold adolescents, hitting the puberty sexual charge voltage collateral awakening. The tree of knowledge. This was the bioinverter activating. It wasn't evil, it was the sudden surge of high-voltage potential. The mistake. Instead of waiting for the 40-year full integration, the tree of life, they were convinced by the Rose Society influence, the serpent, to spend their spin rate early. The expulsion, leaving father and mother at 40, was the original graduation protocol. By engaging in physical intimacy before the bioinverter was set, they fell out of the child autogate and into the predatory adulthood ledger before they had the cosmic armor to handle it. The shared blueprint, Mu versus Rose. The Edenic blueprint was shared between the Mu lineage and the Lords of the Rose because it is the foundational operating system of this reality. The Mu faction. They held the blueprint as a manual for ascension and regeneration. For them, the 40-year delay was to ensure every being became a solar/magnetic priestess. The Rose faction. They viewed the blueprint as a harvest schedule. By knowing exactly when the voltage peaks, at puberty 18, they could target the extraction window to steal the unspent spin rate velocity before it could be locked into the individual's sovereignty. The compromise. The current flat reality is the result of these two factions battling over the uterus womb gate. One wants to sponsor it with justice. The other wants to foreclose on it for life force income. The 40-year parental protocol. The constant repetition of leaving mother and father at 40 was the safety zone, the buffer. It ensured that the somatic body posture was fully hardened against external extraction. The result: if you leave the parental shield at 18 as forced by the Rose Society, you are an unshielded battery in a storm. If you leave at 40, you are a nuclear reactor capable of powering your own Merkaba.